the fuck are we doing here, man?
Yeah, I've been thinking that myself, actually. Why the fuck did we come to Lebanon
Ugh.
to record a podcast?
No, we had to sneak in fucking beer for this one, guys. We're putting ourselves at great risk. Apparently,
Really?
they can like kill you for that. I don't know. Maybe they can.
Plenty of cigarettes, though.
Yeah, good
A
cigarettes.
lot of cigarettes around. That's nice.
Mine.
I have to say, geographically, pretty beautiful place.
Is it racist though that my pack of cigarettes has a camel on it? Is that okay?
Well, no, because it's they're native to this part of the world.
That's
I
true.
think that's cool. It'd be more racist. I think it's more of a cultural appropriation example when we have camels on our packs of cigarettes. White people not understanding the cultural significance of.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is the Bullshit Buddies, Chad and Jeffrey, coming to you live from Lebanon. As regretful of a decision as that may be.
Yeah.
And appropriately, both given our location and the recent news events, we're here to talk about the trans issue. I reference that because, of course, trans people don't fare too well in Lebanon, as they don't in most Muslim countries. And not like don't fare well, like they face some, kind of societal misunderstanding and, get bullied a little bit more often. But no, I mean, like the more along the lines of like getting fucking killed and executed in public type places. So we thought it was an appropriate place to tackle that particular issue. And the current events being, aside from the fact actually that, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, but it seems like the FaceTime that transgenderism and transsexualism gets in the media is like nowhere proportional to how big of a phenomenon that actually is in society. Like, I mean, the numbers vary a lot, but the most liberal estimates that I've seen of how many trans people there are is like 0.5%, and it seems to go into hundreds of a percent with a lot of. I mean, and it varies from place to place too. I think the most I've seen, not in the United States, was like a percent of the population or something, but it seems like every like fifth news story that I see somehow it ties into this now, and I mean, but since the whole trans bathroom issue kicked off, it's just been trans.
And of course, we're not talking about this because of the military decision.
Well, and that was the most recent one that I was talking about when our fearful, buffoonish leader,
chief.
Yeah.
It's just too easy to call him a Cheeto now. Everybody does it.
I need to start coming with some new insults. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure they'll come. But he decided, through his normal platform of dispersing public policy, that took everybody, including most people in his administration and the military, by surprise, announced that trans folks were no longer going to be allowed to serve in the military. And of course, limited in characters as tweets are, he left out some pretty integral details, like what happens to trans people already in the military. The phrasing, are you talking about that their government's not going to pay for trans medical needs, or are you saying they can't serve altogether? Or a lot of unanswered questions, but it's been
from Trump's decision, you mean? Like, the things that he didn't address.
Well, I mean, decision might even be kind of a strong word. He just popped it off in a tweet. I mean, what laws are you talking about? What actual government, military policy is he referring that he's gonna? I mean, there's no structure to this. He kind of just like, they're not going to be in the military anymore. Right. It's like, what do you mean? What does that entail? So I guess a lot of unanswered questions, and maybe that's part of the reason why it's gotten so much attention. But I actually think it's hit the perfect storm of Trump picking two issues. Well, one, I mean, anytime Trump says anything, the media blows up into a frenzy. Doesn't matter, even if it's not too inflammatory. But then, like I just mentioned, the trans issue has been so prevalent recently in the media. I feel like it would have been the perfect trifecta if he had said like black trans people can't serve in the military, because then you'd have the race issue, the trans issue, and Trump said it.
Right.
And goddamn, that would be literally there'd be nothing but. You have whole newspapers just front page to back dedicated to that, examining just that. So that's why we decided to get into trans this week.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
That's why I decided to go trans this week.
We might be we might be a little quiet on this one. I don't want to say trans too loudly where we are.
Get the
Do you think they should be in the military, or do you think that's anything that the military should be involved in? Because the arguments that I'm seeing, which are pro, which I don't know that my opinion or anybody's opinion really matters on this who isn't in the military or is not actively seeking military employment. But the articles that I see are trying to conflate trans with sexual orientation. It's like, it's not a sexual orientation. And they say, well, we didn't allow gays in the military for so long. Are we going to go back to those days now, which was like, 2000, whatever. And disbar another group of people from going in the military. It's like, well, they're not the same thing, for one. And then people with anxiety aren't allowed in the military. People who are, who have suffered from anorexia or depression are not allowed in the military.
Right.
So conversely, people who suffer from body dysmorphia might not, maybe, I don't know.
Sorry, dysphoria.
Yeah, dysphoria, body dysphoria,
Yeah.
or gender dysphoria.
You said dysmorphia.
Gender dysphoria. No.
Yeah. You said dysmorphia.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, dysphoria.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify before we move forward, but I could actually see how that term.
And I also said body dysphoria. I meant gender dysphoria.
Yeah. Well, they're all kind of used weirdly interchangeably, and I think that this kind of has to do something with how psychology, which is basically what is studying all of this, is a much not quite as hard of a science, if people even want to consider it a science at all. In terms of what really is the most accurate term to use. Is it gender identity disorder? Is it body dysphoria? Is it gender dysphoria, gender identity dysphoria? Just calling it being transgendered or transsexual. I mean, that and everyone kind of seems to be operating with a slightly different set of what these things actually mean. And sometimes you can point back to different psychology organizations that have decided this, that, or the other thing.
But that's very telling of where we are, right? Is that we don't really know what it is yet. What and that goes deeper. We don't know the psychological reasons for it. We don't know there was I hate citing studies without the appropriate citation, but when you go about through your day and you're just looking stuff up, you tend to read a lot of things, and there was one, and I'm not claiming any legitimacy to it, but it is something to think about, that a lot of people who identify as trans, they seem to have a history of sexual abuse in their childhood.
Yeah, so that's if I saw a similar one, and I think it was about 60% of trans people. Yeah. And the kind of prevailing theory there was that you, as one gender that you were when you were a child, was sexually abused, and kind of a mental gymnastics effort to distance yourself from that sexual abuse, you identified as the gender that was not the gender you were when you were getting sexually abused. Yeah, which seemed to be the kind of the theory for it.
Seems like actually a pretty good argument,
right? But to backtrack a little bit, because you originally asked, do you think they should be in the military, and then you proceeded to list off several, depending on what you want to call them, disorders or
several conflicting opinions, because I don't think anybody really knows how to deal with it.
Well, but you said somebody who's depressed, or who has anxiety, who has essentially mental disorder, all the way up through chronic mental illnesses, are not allowed to serve in the military. And the rationale for that being that you can't be under fire when other people are relying on you, and get kind of moody because you're depressed, or start having a panic attack. And this immediately broaches into the subject of whether or not you want to consider being transgendered to be a mental disorder or a mental illness. And the DSM, you're familiar with, right? The American Psychiatric Association has a book that's used for the most part by American and some international psychologists to diagnose mental disorders. And transgenderism was listed as one of those up until 2012, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. And then they did this crazy fucking thing that I've never seen them do with any other kind of disorder that they listed there, where they reclassified it and said that being transgendered or having gender identity disorder is not a mental illness. But the distress that results from having
gender
identity disorder
I
is a mental disorder. And that's fucking insane to me. That would be like saying, well, being schizophrenic's not a mental illness. Hearing crazy voices in your head telling you to do things, that's the real mental illness. Or depression's not a mental illness, it's the fact that you have a gun to your head and you're screaming that your life is worthless is the mental illness. And when you have two things, like nobody who's not transgendered or doesn't suffer from gender identity disorder or dysphoria, again, whatever the fuck you want to call it, nobody who has that, nobody's distressed about their body, their gender, their identity, who doesn't have one of those things. Like they're inseparable from one another. So it just seems so weird to me to have this. It seemed really like PC kind of like I'm just trying to be really nice.
It seems like a political move.
Yeah, and it seemed like they're compromising their professional integrity for the sake of, well, I mean, we're not trying to say that they're mentally ill or anything. So in that regard, I mean, as you mentioned, you wouldn't want somebody to be depressed in the field. You wouldn't want somebody to have to be taking irregular medications in the field in conditions that might not allow for it, when having to do so puts other people's lives at risk. So, to have somebody who's just distressed being in the body that they're in seems like a problem. And then somebody who's actually transitioned requires regular hormone treatment. And are you familiar with, this one was new to me, but vaginal dilation?
Yeah.
When you get a fake vagina and you have to basically spend time exercising it and stretching it out using essentially dildos. They're like sets of specifically made dildos.
I am familiar
for
with
different
that.
stages. I did not know that, man.
Yeah, it's like gauging your ears.
Yeah, no, and that was dude, get out of my head. That was the first thing that I thought of when I was like, you got to keep some shit in there, otherwise it's gonna start closing up.
Right.
But I mean, I guess you could let somebody in the field who has gauged ears, because they could just stop, and the worst thing is they kind of
come on. We're millennials. We all have gauged ears.
Well, but my point is failure to continue gauging your ears results in a little butthole-looking thing where your earlobe is, but it's not running the serious health risks of failing to properly care for your fake vagina.
Right.
So, so yeah, I mean, from those points of view, I could totally see how. At very least, not in combat positions, right?
Yeah.
You want to have somebody who's chilling in a base running tech shit, who's going to have access to a bathroom and time off to do the vaginal dilation or to take their hormone treatments or whatever. That I could see kind of a better argument for. But I don't know if I want to. If I was a soldier, I'm not sure to what extent I'd want somebody who has all of these extra needs on top of your average person to be fighting alongside.
Well, it's definitely like you're taking like the purely, which I agree with your point, but it's definitely the purely post-operation trans, not necessarily somebody who just, like Blair White, who I watch on YouTube, is it's a he to she transformation, and really intelligent and well spoken. They're kind of like, they said this themselves, so I can say they sound like a ghetto valley girl, but like the ultra stereotypical like trashy female. But they're pretty intelligent, well spoken in their own choice of dialect.
Are you using they as a preferred pronoun right now?
No, it's that's the thing, right? Sometimes you catch yourself doing that, but it's not because it's just no. That's how I talk. But now it's like, was that compelled? No, it wasn't compelled.
Okay, curious.
Yeah, and I mean, Blair White's one of those people where if you saw him on the street, you're like, that's a girl, like for sure.
All right.
But they said something that was, I thought, pretty interesting. She said something that was pretty interesting. Somebody asked her on Twitter if she had a penis still, or if they planned on getting surgery, and they said, yes, I still have a penis, and no, I'm not getting surgery. I'm circumcised. I think one mutilation is enough.
Damn.
So, okay, they represent as a. Well, I'm just saying, like, in the military, that type of person, that might not be that big of a deal. They don't really require any, as far as I know.
Right.
Don't require any special medical care.
Well, I did mention before the much longer piece on the actual care that's required for post-op individuals, that it does seem like the distress resulting from gender identity disorder, dysphoria, whatever the fuck you want to call it, is to some degree inseparable.
Yeah.
The cure for that, or the best known cure that we know of, is actually transitioning and getting hormone treatments. But it's the same reason we don't want a depressed individual or a distressed individual with anxiety. And I don't know if it's I don't know if it's distress in quite the same way, but you want somebody who's freaking out about being who they are next to you with a gun,
well,
covering your six, man. I mean,
I think
I'm not really sure, but I can kind of see how the argument applies for both. It's not just the extra treatment that's required; it's the mental state that comes into question.
I think we're the military is a cohesive, and people say how disorganized the military is, but like when you think of the size of our military, it's incredibly well organized. I mean, could anybody do it?
Those guys live for order, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
More OCD motherfuckers in the military probably than anywhere else.
Yeah, and as much as they fuck things up, just through mistakes, or what have you, in a combat situation or even a peacetime situation, just look at all the moving parts it has and think of somebody that could do a better job than this group of people that is overseeing it. It's probably not going to happen. So it's an ordered unit, and I think much like you and me, something that we have in common with trans people is, by nature, like trans people they don't take orders, right? Like they're outsiders, which is I think a good thing to be. They're thinkers. They're people who are, not necessarily going to say, because you told me to do something, I'm going to do something. They don't really respect that chain of command.
You think that's inherent to being trans, though?
I think, I believe it probably has something to do, again, just conjecture, with having gender dysphoria in the first place.
I might almost...
If sexual abuse is only 60%, which is, over half, but a lot number, high number. I can only imagine that a lot number. It's a lot of numbers. I can only imagine that. Yeah, there's a, I'm probably not putting it very well, but I think you get my point. Is
I think I do understand it, that there's something kind of inherent to resisting authority that comes with both feelings, the dysphoria, the distress, and then the high history of sexual abuse or whatever it was that led people to that point. Kind of makes them non-conformists, right? But I would actually say that I don't fully agree with that. I almost feel to some extent like maybe this is also speculation, but I think maybe you're conflating the trans advocates and their attitude and their position with actual trans people themselves, because it seems like very often when they actually get a trans person to come and tell us about what it's like to be trans on evening news and all this, and they're just kind of like, I just want to be left alone.
That's true.
I don't care about this.
You are right about
just
that.
Let me piss where I want to piss, and we're cool, man. But then you have all the advocates who are all chiming in left, right, and center to say, well, you can't tell. I think the kind of, quite frankly, irritating attitude comes more from trans advocates than trans people themselves.
You're definitely right about that. And I see
where you're going with that, though.
See, kids, though. That this I'm talking to the audience, that this is what conversation does. You get an idea that I didn't know I was going to say that until I said it, but it was something obviously that was in my head,
and then I brutally wrecked
and then it was shot down, and I admitted my defeat, and we move on, and now I am wiser for it.
No, so that's where you fucked up. You're supposed to dig your heels in, despite lacking any evidence, and call me a bigot.
But people are going to call me an asshole because even though I fully retracted that statement, they were like, "You fucking don't even understand shit." Like, okay, this is what discourse does.
The point of this is, shooting the shit, man. And I feel like people need to do that kind of stuff more often. I actually little mini tangent, but this happens to me all the time, I think, because, people like you and I, a lot of people that I associate with, can just have discussions about things, and you can throw out an idea, and somebody can listen to you and try to understand it. Like I just did. I just tried to restructure it, and then I went, well, I don't really agree with that, and here's why. And you're like, I hadn't really considered that. You're right about that. But so many people do dig their heels in and want to take things personally. I was having a discussion about white privilege with one of my girlfriend's cousins recently, and I'm trying to be conversational. I'm trying to hear her points out. I'm not interrupting her or anything. By the end of that, it only lasted like 5 minutes, and by the end of it, she was fuming mad, just super pissed. And there was actually multiple people in the conversation. She was kind of one of the only ones who were like that. But yeah, I mean, it's weird. This like people want to stick to their ideologies so much.
I think that the reason like people get mad in that situation is because if you presented if the person who is about to get mad presented the argument to their best of understanding, and then it is sidestepped and parried, and they know that it's been parried, but they really still want to stick to that idea, then they get angry.
Well, that's what I mean, but why? Why would,
because you're challenging their worldview. They built themselves up to be this person, but they didn't really understand the argument they were making in the first place clearly. Because, you know, did they think about this, or did they read this and agree with it?
When it comes to higher understanding of a lot of different things, though, whatever you had previously gets challenged so that you can build up new things. I mean, this isn't a perfect example, but I could kind of think of like with math. You know, when you're first taught division, you have remainders, right?
Oh yeah.
And I can't think of anyone who got offended when they were told, well, actually, you don't want to do remainders, you want to do decimals or whatever. Like remainders aren't a thing, even though that's what you've previously operated under. The knowledge of that's how that thing's done. But it just seems kind of weird that like political ideology, social ideology seems the only area where people, when they're essentially proven wrong, I mean, as you said, they acknowledge probably in their head that they're wrong. They just want to get angry about that. It's weird. Yeah. Anyways,
so do we like? You mentioned how, is this really a big deal? How many trans people serve in the military?
Oh fuck.
If we're talking about 1% of the population.
Well, that's generous, though. I mean, I think the more realistic ones that I've seen are more like 0.05% of the population.
Okay.
From what
and the military is a minority as well.
Right.
So you talk about
I think it's like 1.2 active.
1.2
million. Sorry,
million. Okay.
I think
active trans. No, active military. I was like, no way. It's the whole military.
I really ought to know better because I was just complaining about how much this has been getting talked about in the media.
Yeah.
But I think part of hearing it from so many different sources and hearing all the different sources throwing out their numbers, we could check this, but I want to say it was like 2,000. And this actually kind of ties back into a lot of.
Let's just bring it up. Let's say 10,000.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. We'll round it up. But
that's a big roundup. This is why we're humanities guys. We didn't excel at maths.
Yeah. Anyways, and this is actually why I think one of the stupider arguments against having trans people in the military is the cost associated with care. Because you might be right to say that on an individual basis, full gender reassignment surgery, let's say that the military starts paying for that, it's kind of a costly surgery in and of itself, but just the sheer number of trans people in the military, like we're up to like 60 billion now or whatever military spending. It's like, okay, you gotta pay for 2,000. Let's say none of them are transitioned, they all want it.
It's not military, that much. Yeah,
it's not. It drops in the bucket compared to what the military
compared to like
spends.
A guy who's had half his body blown off and he needs fully reconstructive surgery, physical therapy.
Well, but I'd also say one of the differences with that is that how much medical need is there really? We mentioned that it does seem to be the only cure for gender dysphoria. But
I think like you're supposed to be on hormones for
okay, but so is it? It's definitely if somebody serves them with the military and they go out and step on a landmine while they're in a country that they're only in because the military told them they had to be there, and their legs get blown off, the military is responsible for their medical care.
Right.
No questions asked, right? If somebody's uncomfortable in their body as a result of what's quite arguably a mental disorder, and the military decides to let them in the first place, is the military then obligated to pay for a surgery that will make them more...
Dude, they have hummingbirds in Lebanon?
I know, I was about to say they have hummingbirds in Lebanon. That fucker looks aggressive, though, dude.
That guy got right up in my face.
Damn. Yeah. Anyways, so is the military obligated to pay for something like that under those circumstances? I mean, we can both agree that
yes.
even if they do, yes?
I think so. I think so, and I have a direct anecdotal thing.
Direct
anecdotal example.
The strongest kind of evidence.
I was denied access to the military for mental health reasons I won't go into, but a lot of my friends went in the military, and I know one friend in particular, I know more, but one friend got caught. He had asthma bad, and he got through boot camp, and right when he was in the infantry in the Army, and right when he got through boot camp, he had the badass asthma attack just out of the blue. And he went to, and he goes to the I don't know what they call him, but the medic, because everybody in the military is just sleeping on the field. Medic, yeah. Anyway, so he goes to the military doctor, and I'm having an asthma attack, and he had said I don't have asthma in his medical assessment, and basically what the military said was, here's an inhaler, and you're in now, buddy. Right. And they paid for it. So that is. Obviously shouldn't lie about that kind of shit, but that was something that happened, and the military decided they were going to pay for it. So if that is the case, which I'm sure with a lot of other people, because the military is just too big for that not to be the case, with people are going to lie to get into the military, and the military obviously decides to take on that medical expense, then yes, trans people, after acceptance, should be allowed that medical care. And I would even go so far as to say, if they lied about being trans and then said, "Oh shit, I'm trans," and to a point, yeah, I guess they are liable for that medical care. But there's also the offside of that. The military can say at any time, "You lied. This is a dishonorable discharge now." So it's not even like a definite one way or the other in that community. You know what I mean? So
right. Okay. By way of comparison, and I've used these examples before in arguments, just compare treatment of asthma, which is biologically studied, has biological causes, has real physical manifestations. I mean, doubled over, wheezing, coughing, unable to get a breath in. There's some real symptoms there. Two different other things that we don't really tend to shy away from calling mental illnesses. There is species dysphoria, and then there's
otherkin.
It's called but then it's called various things. But
do we actually have a medical term for that now?
Deity dysphoria, or the God delusion. Not in the sense of the book, but another word for it. But people who think that they are either part or all God, essentially. Those happen. Those happen.
I'm just hearing of this now.
No, those are both real things.
Actually, no. There was a guy who thought he was Jesus.
In terms of the God delusion bit, seems to be minuscule, but the species dysphoria actually cuts it pretty close in terms of overall percentage of the population. Like if you're talking about 0.05%, and people have species dysphoria is 0.01. That's 5 times more, but in terms of overall percentage of the population, they're both tiny, right?
So the question is, would we let a cat into the military?
Well, so here's my thing. So somebody, and the arguments all seem to be more or less the same. Somebody comes to you and says, "I feel like I'm a cat born in a human's body. I feel trapped here. I don't feel, feel that the species that I was assigned at birth, aligns with the species that I actually am." There's really no concrete arguments that can be made for transgenderism that can't be made for transspeciesism. But then you have that person who says, okay, so in the best possible way you can go about treating this is to, surgically implant hairs all over my body and let me grow out my nails really long, and I want to walk around naked on all fours and wear a collar, and I want people to scratch me behind the ears. Well, okay, I mean, you're laughing, and it seems kind of fucking ridiculous, but that very well.
I was just thinking of an S&M movie I saw.
You'll have to share that later, buddy. We just found out what we're doing after this.
Well, no, that's not together.
There's nothing wrong with two dudes watching some S&M pornography together.
It's true. Pants on. Pants on.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. It's for science, really.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. No, man, and that's a pretty extreme example. I'll grant you, but so is chopping off your dick and having the cavity where that used to go hollowed out, and all your your penis head wrapped back around and taped on, or whatever the fuck they do to make it kind of like this massive clitoris and all this. I mean, like the gender reassignment surgery is pretty brutal in terms of like cosmetic surgeries.
It's as invasive as you probably can be.
Right. And people would even disagree with calling it cosmetic because they say that there's some kind of medical need because it's going to make this person feel better. But you can say the same thing about
breast implants.
We'll see.
Small boobied women who want to be big boobied women.
Hell, maybe even that.
Feel better when they
have
big boobs.
Because I'm talking about the person who wants to be a cat or a person who wants to be a goat. They want to have you chop off their hands, sew hooves on, and get some antlers. Mm-hmm. Goats have horns, right?
Yeah. Well, male goats. Billy goats have horns.
Billy goats, some shit, whatever.
There's some kind of shit growing out of their head.
Gazelle, because I know that gazelles have horns. And they wanted to get that done. At what point are you kind of just bending over backwards to comply with the kind of crazy demands of their mental illness and their kind of fucked up mental state out of pocket? I mean, if somebody has already paid for that themselves, and I don't know, dude. I could see a cat soldier as being a very ninja-like, useful asset. Maybe they're great, but to what extent can you expect the military to cough up for that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And with the asthma thing, I feel like I should touch back on that. That the usual thing that happens with that is to my knowledge, is a dishonorable discharge for lying. There, in that vein, there are surgeries that a regular, just normal, no gender problem human can have that keep him out of the military. Like almost any surgery, really. I mean,
being flat-footed was a
being flat-footed is a disqualifier.
Is that still a disqualifier?
I don't know if it's still a disqualifier.
I don't think it is anymore.
But it was for a long time. I mean, really long time. One of these
fighter pilots aren't allowed to have any kind of eye.
I just dumped the ashtray on myself. All right, I knew that was going to happen eventually.
It's magnetized and everything, man. How the fuck did you manage that?
I don't know.
Anyways, at least last I checked, I don't know. This shit's all changing. Man, that's a lot of ash on your pants. Fighter pilots basically have to have 20/20 or better, right? Because the idea that if you have corrective lenses and you're flying around in the fucking F-16 at Mach 3 or where the fuck they go, and your lens, slips behind your eye.
Yeah. Well, it was a big deal
in that situation. So
it was a big deal when they allowed pilots to have LASIK. And if their vision could be corrected to standard with LASIK. I
forgot about that.
And the reason it was a big deal was because at high altitudes, and any mountain climber knows this, at high altitudes, LASIK eye surgery, at least in its older form, clouded your eyes. There was there was a book. John Krakauer is the author. I can't remember what the book was called. It was about climbing Everest, and there was a guy who had LASIK eye surgery. And this is back in like the early 90s, I want to say. And so it was one of the first iterations of LASIK. And it's the same time that the military was looking at LASIK. And he got up and his eyes just clouded up. He couldn't see. He was effectively blind.
It's a shitty time to find that out.
Well, yeah. So they let him down, but everything on that expedition went wrong. And it's kind of it's an amazing story, and it's a little funny. But it's also just just put yourself in this guy's shoes. His eyes are all totally clouded over.
Yeah, what, you get to base 2 or whatever the fuck?
Well, yeah, he gets to, I don't know how they exactly numbered anymore, but it's base camp, and then I think they have 3.
That's why I said base 2. I think there's 2 more after base.
I think there's like a total of 3 camps that go higher up the mountain, and then of course from base 4 is when you actually make your expedition up, and base 4 is a very minuscule camp, as 3 and 2. I don't know if that's what they're called, but yeah.
Base camp's actually huge.
Yeah,
I've seen the pictures.
It's a big party.
Yeah.
But they get him down off the top, and everything's just going awry. And he's like, he can't see, and he's like, he's got some oxygen problems. He's got fucking frostbite. He's like, we're gonna leave him here. Like, he's gonna die. So they left him there. They thought he was actually dead, so they left him there. And they go down to base camp. And then like they're getting ready to leave the next day or something like that. It's been a while since I read the story.
Stumbles into camp.
Yeah, he stumbles into the camp, and then they like stay, and they're like, oh my god, like you know they warm up, and then they're like, oh shit, he died. Like okay, he can't make it to base 2. No way, we're gonna leave him here because they're running low themselves. They have just enough energy. They're gonna die too.
He stumbles
down to base
Jesus
2.
Christ.
And then they're like, okay, fine, we're just gonna carry him down to base camp.
I really wants it.
He lived, yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Well, fuck, my excuses for not getting at least halfway up Everest are just shot now. This motherfucker got down blind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frostbite.
Got down pretty much blind, yeah.
God damn it. Anyways, main I think where that tangent came from was that there's certain
there's
medical
certain
requirements,
non-invasive really by standards of surgeries that you can have that the military says no, you know.
Well, I think we're also talking about like what is the military willing to pay for though.
But I don't think that's really obviously the military cannot bend over backwards for everybody because that's how you increase expenditure.
Right.
But I think in regards to just trans, it's a small population. It's an even smaller population they're going to want to serve because that's just how everything goes. It's not like every single trans person in America is going to want to serve. So it's a smaller population that's going to serve. So the surgery then for individual, yes, it's very expensive. But for the military, if it's a drop in the bucket. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with that completely. But my point is that I know slippery slope is a fallacy. Actually, this isn't even slippery slope. This is just logical equivalence. There's no arguments for why you should allow a trans person to have a gender reassignment surgery as opposed to somebody who has species dysphoria.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
That's kind of my main point. Is like, okay, if you open that up and you say, yeah, if you have any kind of gender, or I mean, like I mentioned the deity delusions earlier. The military has certain
Can you put a halo in the back of my head permanently?
Yeah, well, I mean, not even surgery, but I mean, the military has requirements on, you got to shave your head for basic training and stuff like that. Well, I mean, but you get a guy in who thinks he's Jesus, and he doesn't want to wear the combat fatigues. He wants to wear a robe with a red sash, and we can't shave his head because he needs the long locks and the full beard. And he doesn't want to wear combat boots. He'd really rather wear sandals. It's kind of my point is if you want to start saying all delusions essentially are valid and the military needs to comply with them and further needs to cough up to help help those people feel more comfortable with whatever delusion they have, like many people seem to be arguing that they should with trans people. You have other people who you're gonna have to bend over backwards for the guy who thinks he's Jesus. Fuck, the military's gonna have to cough up for those sandals. They're gonna have to. They're paying for that now. And same thing with the guy who wants gazelle horns surgically implanted into his skull. You're gonna have to. The military's gonna have to pay for that too.
You know what I really feel like this whole thing is it's two people. I mean, obviously two groups of people, but like just imagine two peoples shouting at each other over something that they're not directly involved in. And then you have the little trans person in the center going, I just wanted to go in the military and I didn't want anybody to pay for anything. I just wanted to serve my country. And that's the fucking bullshit of this whole goddamn argument, is that you have, I would imagine, just good people that want to serve. They want to serve because they think they should serve their country.
Yeah.
And it's turned into this giant political bullshit. Hey, if you're trans, you want to go in the military, you know what you got to do. Yeah. Don't say you're trans. Just don't bring it up because it's not going to come up.
Do we want to get into the whole Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy?
But it's different because we're not saying that we're not saying deny your sexuality or your sexual orientation. We're just, I mean, it's like.
Well, while you're thinking about that, I would do agree that we should have qualified this much earlier on by saying however many active trans service members we have and however many are interested in getting into it.
I guess don't say you're trans.
Obviously respect those though. I mean,
don't say you're trans was the wrong way to put it. It's not really what I meant. What I meant was don't make a giant fucking deal about it. Because I don't think that most trans people are making a giant deal about it,
Right. But then you get one of those in the military who says, but I want you to pay for breast implants and chop off my dick and whittle out my abdomen. is the military obligated to pay for that? You mentioned with asthma.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys already got through basic, and the military has to provide them an inhaler. Doesn't seem too far-fetched, and I'm not even talking costs, just with how drastic and how invasive and how, an inhaler is not, you're good.
Yeah.
It's not, we're going to put you under and chop off your main sex organ and reconstitute the parts to form a sex organ that's not the one that's what you are. It just seems crazy to me.
It's just,
I've gotten shit for referring to that as mutilation or disfigurement before, and it's kind of like, yeah, but kind of. I mean, I don't know. I mean, even you mentioned breast implants. It's like a little incision and sticking some silicone up there is kind of weird as it is.
Yeah.
When you don't even have tits in the first place, it gets a lot weirder, and then you get into the territory of chopping off dicks, dude.
Here's what I would say.
Nuts.
And I think this is the only way you can look at it. If the surgery is something that the military wouldn't allow in the first place, like if it's an invasive surgery, like if you had there was a guy who had his lung collapsed, and he had it removed, and the military said no, we're not taking you. So if and that's obviously very invasive, and it also leaves him physically
handicapped,
but which you could say that somebody who needs to take hormones every day and yada yada is also physically handicapped, although they're not the same way, of course. If it's something the military would disbar you from in the first place on that kind of surgery, then they're under no obligation to pay for it. That's the only way you can really look at it fairly, right?
I think that's a good I think that's a good middle ground. Moving away from,
is disbar, that's a term used outside of lawyers, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, well,
I didn't catch that the first time.
It's just we're gonna use it today.
Whatever.
I'm gonna run with it.
So moving away from the military specific issue a little bit. Oh fuck, dude, the military police.
Oh my god, they heard trans.
Oh shit.
We're hoping they fly over.
I think we're safe, folks.
Yeah, we're good.
They seem to be moving on. All right.
No slightly shorter men with long beards came down to take us away this time.
Fuck, man. I'm sweating right now. Well, it might just be the heat.
I think it's probably the heat.
Anyways, okay, so moving away from the military issue a bit, I think we've reached a fairly amicable consensus on that. Just in terms of is being trans a mental disorder. One thing I feel like a lot of people miss. I've spoken about this with a lot of people, and I get this huge blowback over, no, trans needs to be defined as a medical illness, not just because of the symptoms, not just because of the way that people feel, and this is the part that they miss, but this crafty DSM redefinition that I mentioned earlier still basically allowed for the distress to be considered a mental illness, but there was a specific reason for that.
Right.
And that was that healthy people don't need to get invasive surgeries to fix something that's wrong with them. Healthy people don't need to have prescriptions of lifelong mind and body altering drugs to help them fix something. If you say that chronic pain isn't an issue, you're not allowed to give somebody pain medication,
right?
Because they don't have an issue. So they needed to keep some element of gender identity, dysphoria, whatever. They needed to keep. They moved to distress. They said the distress was actually the mental illness, and I disagree with that, as we mentioned, because it seems really, really political. But they needed some element of transgenderism to stay in the DSM. Otherwise, these folks, no doctor would be allowed to do trans surgeries if they weren't addressing a medical condition. No doctor would be allowed to prescribe mind and body altering drugs if they weren't addressing a mental condition. You can't just walk into a doctor's office and say, I just kind of feel like getting some Vicodin. Can you just give me some Vicodin?
Well, over
the counter? No, they're not going to give it to you. If you have to go through and you have to get it prescribed from a medical professional. So it's actually crucial that that transgenderism retains some elements of its medical disorder, illness, whatever you want to call it, status. It's crucial for trans people. There's no hope in hell of them ever getting those things, say, subsidized by their insurance companies if it's not seen as a mental disorder or mental illness.
Here's a very abbreviated discussion I had with somebody that I think sums up the whole thing quite nicely. And this person was not trans as such, but they were very much in the trans advocacy group. And, I think the trans advocacy group is necessary. I think they're good. You're usually like, you can't just these people, trans people, they deserve every human right available to them. But the idea that we would kind of, manipulate how the world is viewed because of it is a little ridiculous. But here's the argument that I had. I would define a mental illness as anything that would cause you to do self-mutilation. Like, that's the definite point where it's a mental illness, because of something you feel in your head causes you to take a knife to yourself, right? So then this person said, well, cancer patients have to take a knife to themselves, or obviously we're talking about surgery, to get cured. Like, a lot of times you cut the cancer out. And I said, yeah, but that's a disease that's eating you. And she said, but in your head, like you feel like this gender dysphoria is something that's eating you like cancer. I said, right, because it is a illness.
Actually, I mean, no, you make a good point. I think that your definition of mental illness is a little too specific in terms of.
Well, I mean, it's not about cancer. It's just like, yes, it does eat them. I understand it eats them,
but that means that it's a disorder,
right? It is
if you're living with extreme distress.
How is it not?
No, and here's a crazy thing: is in arguing this kind of stuff, I've come across people who. And actually, not even just people. If you look at the
real quick before we go on the tangent, maybe, like I said in that argument, the best thing to do for them was to take a knife to themselves and get that problem fixed.
Right?
And transition, but that doesn't make it any less of an illness.
Agreed.
The best thing a cancer patient can do, if it's beyond chemo, is get the cancer cut out of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but something that I've come across that blew my mind, and you'll see this. If you want to look up, the distress resulting from gender dysphoria on Wikipedia or even in the DSM, it'll say things like most trans people suffer from some kind of gender dysphoria.
Do you think the cops heard that beer opening?
Could have been soda.
Good point. Yeah. Shit, I said beer. Fuck. Actually, we're just assuming that Lebanon is a dry country. We didn't go to any.
Well, it was.
We haven't seen any
to try to sneak in the beer.
We haven't seen any liquor stores. We'll say that.
True.
But we've been too afraid to leave our.
A lot of opium dens.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Anyways, so this kind of like most trans people suffer from distress line, and then I've heard it expressed from other people. Well, not all trans people suffer from dysphoria relating to their gender identity. And I just keep thinking, how could they not? I mean, they list several examples of how people do. Wikipedia does, and they'll say, yeah, most people suffer this. Who are the ones that don't? Who are the ones that deep down, I know that I'm actually a man in a woman's body, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. I don't worry about it at all. I don't dress differently. I don't act differently. I don't talk differently. I don't request that other people speak to me with different pronouns. Right. I have no desire to get gender reassignment surgery. I haven't met any trans people like that. I haven't heard about them.
By definition, and they're not trans.
I've been searching. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like it seems to me like under this super soft core definition of transgenderism, I could be transgender. Because if it doesn't bother you at all, how the fuck do you know that you even have it?
Well, we're both
that'd be like saying, well, not all depressed people have to feel sadness or feelings of worthlessness or suicide. Yeah. It's like, then how the fuck do you know that they're depressed?
Yeah.
They'd have to come to you and say something like I feel like I'm in the wrong body and it's bothering me.
But I couldn't help but notice we're both growing our hair long. Could that be some subconscious desire to be more womanly because we are trans? But
I mean, you joke, but yeah, I mean,
I feel like that's an argument that like somebody would actually say these days.
Yeah, I mean, but seriously, it seems like if you're gonna go with that broad in the definition of what a trans person is, that they don't have to feel any negative effects from their disorder. Again, just kind of seems like a political move on their part rather, to redefined it as something that's not a mental illness. And you didn't touch on this too much, but it needs to be a mental illness in order for them to get the help that they need, medically speaking. They need it to be a medical
excellent point.
Mental illness. They can't get hormone prescription if they don't have a disorder.
Right.
They can't get invasive surgeries prescribed by doctors if they don't have a disorder.
Well, I think so too. Like,
they can't get it subsidized. They can't get their healthcare providers to pay for it. No way in hell. And I think that they should be. And that's the best way that we know of to deal with gender dysphoria is to transition. And they should be allowed to do that, and their whatever medical coverage they have should help cover that. And people seem to want to have their cake and eat it too, and say no, it's not a mental disorder, but at the same time, it should be paid for.
Right.
I'm a little more pragmatic there. I realize that they have to have it defined as some kind of mental illness, and that's why I think that the DSM did this crafty move on their part, where they both wanted to be PC about it and say no, it's not actually being transgender that's the mental disorder, it's the distress from it, even though those things are completely fucking inseparable, because they retained a little bit of pragmatism, realizing that if they just took out all gender dysphoria, all the distress, all of transgenderism, if they removed that entirely from the DSM, those trans folks wouldn't get the treatment that they need.
Well, yeah, and there's also this stupid fucking, I don't know where it came from, this kind of idea that's under this whole, like, just kind of rides the undercurrent of this whole fucking debate that a disorder is a bad thing. Now, you could say that a disorder is not positive, but it doesn't make you a bad person. There's many people that suffer from depression, many people that's like myself that suffer from anxiety. But it's not exactly the cool thing, right? You don't really want it, but it doesn't make you maligned in society.
No, yeah, that's a good point to raise, actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a good foil for that argument that defining it as a bad thing would just be to ask one of the trans people who feels stuck in a body of the wrong gender, what would you rather be in the body of the gender that you identify with? And they're invariably going to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that means something's wrong, right? Something's wrong in how they view themselves and their worldview and their self-identity. Something's currently wrong.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to mean that they're a bad person. No way in hell is anybody trying to suggest, well, maybe some people are, but we're not trying to suggest that. But something seems wrong for them. Personally, it's not. Yeah, like I said, you have panic attacks. You're still all right, I mean,
I can hang out.
I put up with you,
friends,
but no.
I mean, it does change my.
But you'd rather not have that.
I would rather, yeah.
You'd rather not have that. That's my point.
Well, actually, interestingly, not to get off, I was thinking about like, there's and this again goes into my arguments of. A disorder being conflated with negativity is, I guess really, truly, I would rather not have that. But when I look back and think about it, anxiety has affected my worldview, I think, in a positive way. I know so many people get pissed off about stupid shit. But because once a week my body convinces me I'm dying, those things don't tend to bother me. Those stupid little things don't tend to bother me.
Interesting.
But
you do concede that you'd rather...
I would probably, I'd probably rather, like, when I'm in it, I'd be like, I'd rather not be having this right now. This really sucks ass. But, I mean, so same thing, a disorder is a disorder. It's not, it doesn't mean you're a shit person or that you're an idiot. It's just like, let's get it on the insurance plan. Let's get you taken care of,
Yeah, exactly. And
in a way, we're extremely trans advocate, really.
I think we are. Yeah. That's a funny thing that people don't. That I keep running into when I try to have these debates with people is that they. Everything okay? No.
Yeah, I just thought I'm gonna like burn the cord a little bit, but I didn't. Okay, we're good. Sorry.
Probably honestly worse for this.
Are we
cigarette.
Still recording? Yeah. That's gonna be a running joke. That's gonna be a running joke.
Okay. Anyways, no. So one of the things that I mainly encounter when trying to debate these issues with people is. That I want to be able to say that it's a mental illness, mental disorder, and that there's nothing wrong with that we should accept them, that we should let them use whatever bathrooms they want, that we should even afford them special, not necessarily rights, but they should have all the rights that everyone else has, but special protections. As an oppressed minority group, they should have medical coverage, pay for what they need to get, and in all of those senses, it's like, wow, this guy looks really trans friendly. that looks really trans.
I was sipping my beer, but I wanted to say.
Okay, I saw your eyes dart up there. But then they just take issue with this me wanting to say, yeah, but it's also a mental illness. And as I said, I don't think that a lot of people have realized that it has to be a mental illness for them to get the treatment that they need. But just looking at, just fundamentally, you feel like you're in the wrong body.
Yeah.
Just on a base level, that's gotta bother you. That's gotta make it feel like something's wrong with just the status quo of you being you day to day. Something's wrong, mentally speaking. Something's wrong. Like just
right.
That's par for the course for mental disorder. Right.
I was reading an article recently about anxiety, and with anxiety, most of the drugs you're going to get, if not all the drugs you're going to get, are actually drugs for depression. And the reason that is
mood stabilizers, right?
Mood stabilizers, right? Because they don't actually know what causes anxiety. And this whole article is about they think they're getting close, and they've separated the chemical imbalance, and that in 20 years or whatever they might actually have a drug that is specifically designed for people with anxiety. Now, there is nobody out there going, this is a bad disease that we shouldn't, this is a disease or disorder that we shouldn't be looking at. What we have is good enough already. But we are doing that with trans. So if we, classifying it as a disorder, we can look at it honestly, and we can, right now, the treatment stops at surgery and hormone therapy. Is that the best treatment? We only know by actually looking at it. And right now, there's a lot of people who say, you cannot look at this because this is what it is.
Yeah, that all ties back into gender relativism, biological relativism, gender fluidity, and wanting to say it's just a choice, and it doesn't really have any bearing on anything. And then I've noticed, in my opinion, sadly contradictory train of thought coming from people who will point to a few studies that have actually done brain scans of trans individuals and been able to say, well, X, Y, and Z seem to be different on average in trans brains than not. It's kind of like, well, take your pick. Is it a mentally based, biologically based, abnormality in the brain, or is it just fluidity, and is it just a choice? And I would also like to point out that the brain scans have been able to say, yeah, some different shit's going on. We don't know what that means. We don't know what the fuck it's really affecting, aside from that it seems to be more prevalent in trans folks. And yeah, you do kind of have to wonder if we're going to get to some point where they can give you a pill and an injection, maybe just once, pill or an injection, maybe just once, and boom, no more gender dysphoria. Right. Whatever it is
well, I think that's
cured up.
That's why they also don't want it cured, right? Like, I'm not saying the trans people don't want it cured. I'm saying that the people who are trans advocates don't want that to happen, and they will always conflate it to, well, would you cure homosexuality?
Right, that's what I was getting to. They're going to point it to things like pray the gay away therapy, and I think that would be incredibly harmful to say, well, you need to sit a trans person down with a therapist 3 times a week who's going to tell them that, no, you're wrong, you're not actually the gender that you think you are. That's bullshit. Nobody wants that, but I mean, they're experiencing extreme distress. Like, I feel like the only distress the gay person would feel would be if they were either closeted or getting actively bullied.
Right. Which I was gonna say they do,
but that's ignorant people.
Right.
They're surrounded by ignorant people, so they don't feel comfortable in coming out and being who they are.
Yeah.
But with non-transition, non-hormone induced trans people, they feel distress just by virtue of existing and existing wrongly in their view.
Right.
So I mean, I don't really have a right answer for that, but you do kind of have to wonder, is the best possible route to start just hand the person over to the surgeon and start chopping shit off and reshaping shit and get them on a lifelong prescription of mind and body altering drugs, or is it take this pill one time and whatever weird brain chemistry is going on in your head that makes you feel like you're not what you are will go away?
Well, I think it comes down to having options, really. I mean,
that's a good point. Both of those should be available. If somebody wants to say, fuck the pill, I want to just go balls to the wall or balls removed, and
nobody's transition. Gonna. I think that's the the misrepresentation of the argument is like nobody is going to sit somebody down and go, you need to have this shot and you will no longer, let's say gays too. You'll no longer be gay and you will no longer be trans with this one shot. That's an option on the table, right? But it's not what you have to do. But if you're trans and you're afraid of surgery, take the shot. Right. It's easier for you. It's better for you. If you're afraid of it, I mean.
We actually brought this up at the very beginning of this, where you were talking about how some people want to liken it to a sexual preference. Well played.
I know, right? That was a good shot in there.
So we want to liken it to a sexual preference issue, and if homosexuality, you had somebody who is out around people who accepted them, who was comfortable fucking members of the same sex, all that, but some intrinsic aspect of just not liking the opposite sex was causing them extreme distress.
What if it was just, I just want to have biological children? And I can take this little shot and I'll be attracted to women and hopefully have a kid. That's not exactly the strongest argument, but no, I'm just saying.
I just mean that the symptoms, the adverse symptoms of homosexuality are all external.
Oh, I see.
Is my point. Yeah, is that it just being gay. Actually, that you raise a good point. Probably the strongest argument that there would be any kind of intrinsic, internal, not due to outside forces, distress would be that they couldn't have biological children if they wanted to. Although science is getting crazy as fuck with that now, so who knows?
Yeah, it's not going to be an issue for it.
Yeah. But my point is that while there are also external stressors that trans people face, bullying and discrimination and lack of acceptance, there's also internal. Just by virtue of being trans. If you stuck a trans person on a deserted island and didn't have access to hormone treatment or any kind of sex reassignment surgery, they would feel something wrong about the way that they feel. It doesn't take other people bullying them to get there. That certainly exacerbates the problem, but it's... my point is that's why it's not the same as a sexual preference.
That's a good point, because it's the exact same thing with anxiety. Now, anxiety can be brought on by stress, but those with like really hardcore anxiety, things can be going really good. You just be relaxing, watching TV, no stress whatsoever. And then your body totally internally just goes, yeah, you're dying right now. Have fun with that. I
thought you were going to say if you struck a anxiety or anxious person on a desert island, they would feel anxiety. And it's like, I fucking would too, man. Yeah,
no, everybody would.
I'm on a deserted island.
No, I'm saying,
I'm feed myself. I've seen Castaway. This shit doesn't end well.
Actually, that kind of seemed awesome.
What?
Like, yeah, if you could just solve the food problem.
And if you're on like a really bountiful... Well, yeah. I think it seems we both have some introverted tendencies.
Hardcore introverted tendencies.
Well, we both actually do really well in social interactions.
We're extroverted introverts. Yeah.
But we both have that thing, and I think it's one of those things where you would get on the deserted island, and food's chilling, and I can whatever, and you'd have like a great first week, and then you'd be like, I fucking miss people.
Yeah, that's true.
I just recently got moved jobs actually, where I was doing something where I was interfacing with both fellow coworkers and customers in more of a sales capacity on a regular basis. And I was just like, dude, fuck all these morons, fuck all these people coming up and asking me all these stupid questions all the time from my staff, and fuck all these idiot customers that I just, coming up and wanting to be treated like pampy. I had all these complaints, and then I changed positions and they stuck me in a back office where I basically just spend the full fucking 8 to 10 hours every day with my computer. And I'm like, I miss people. And it was like chill for the first week, and then I'm just like, I'm kind of fucking lonely back here. So I think you gotta hit a sweet spot somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think you'd be miserable stuck on a desert island.
Yeah,
year in,
I would give it a month.
I'd give it a month. You'd be hating it.
I'd give it a month, like just a month of peace and quiet, and just be like, all right, now I gotta get the fuck out of here. Let's build a boat.
I think actually the ideal for that would be to be on a desert island with like 3 people. Or deserted island with like 3 people. You know what I mean? You like still interact with people, but you're just not a part of like the bullshit of society. And this is you ever listen to Tool?
Yeah, all the time. I love Tool.
So I don't know if you heard the Joe Rogan, because we can't get through a podcast without referencing other podcasts.
God, we almost fucking did, you dick.
I realized what I was saying right as I was saying it. Lead singer Maynard was on.
Yeah, he's been on there a lot.
Really? I must have missed the other ones. Well, I mean, there's 1,000 of them for me to go through, so
I said this is his third appearance.
Understandable. I missed some, but I don't know, man. I've heard an increasing number of people that he's had on his podcast talking about just living off the grid.
Yeah,
and it appeals to me more and more. And I think it's like that element of isolation, but at the same time, they're not so isolated that they can't drive. You have to drive way fucking further than I do to my nearest Safeway Superstore, but they can drive. Or have gatherings. They can still interact with people, right?
Right.
You're not living in a fucking cabin, literally thousands of miles away from the nearest human being.
Right.
But you're not a part of like mainstream society. You're not. I spend 2 hours every fucking day that I go to work dealing with literally thousands of morons packed in like sardines on freeways, just cutting each other off and acting like morons. And and I don't think that's how we best operate. I don't think that's how anyone best operates.
It's definitely not how anybody best operates, but I kind of like, I mean, the idea, because I'm a huge cyberpunk fan, I like the idea of having your little space, your apartment or whatever in this huge city that's just uniquely yours. But you're, it's like, this is my little area of freedom. And then out there is just shit that I got to get through every day. Kind of appeals to me in some weird way.
So I mean, it's like, why would you have? I wouldn't even want the point or the part where you have to get through something. I just having self-sustaining,
it's probably disorder.
Food growth for the most part. I mean, I don't like. I like the idea of. Yeah, I mean, I don't have to go to the grocery store, superstore with fight for fucking parking and have to weave my way around idiots who think that stopping their cart fucking perpendicular to the aisles is like smart and shit. Like I just don't want to have to deal with the mass stupidity. But if I'm growing my own crops and I need a new sprinkler head, I can go in and shoot the shit with Bob, who works at the sprinkler store 30 miles away. Like I just like I don't want to be so removed from society that I don't.
All Bob's work at sprinkler stores. Is there a thing at the sprinkler store? Like we sell sprinklers. And that's it, dude.
Actually, dude, if you start driving through bumfuck nowhere, you see some oddly specific stores. I mean, like whenever I'm going to do some like extreme, like 6 hours away from civilization type camping trip or something, you're just driving through all the middle of nowhere towns. You'll see shit like that. You'll see just like, like this is like I saw like a battery store. Like a decent sized battery store. It's like I go to Fry's or just a grocery store and they have a whole section for that, but like they're able to specialize enough out there, I guess, probably because rent's so fucking cheap.
Yeah, probably.
One other little aside actually is I always felt fucking sorry for like I had a decent amount of sexual success, I mean, like, fuck some bitches in high school and college or whatever. But like, you imagine being out in one of those towns, population 35, and you're like the only teenager around, and you're a boy, and you're just like, I want to I want to talk to chicks, and like everyone else around you is either like a child or like way older, and you're just like imagine like literally like you probably have some romance going on with some girl who lives 50 miles away in the next middle of bumfuck nowhere town, and like she's literally your only option. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. I just every time I drive through one of those places, I'm just like I'm thinking about the youth.
Oh,
about,
right.
Like, how the fuck do youth deal with
they
this?
just have like that, and that ends up being their wife, and they never knew anybody else, and
well, but also just like from the camaraderie element. I mean, like the child and teenage years are a pretty small amount of time overall. Like I feel like once you get to like 25ish, you can start interfacing with people who are like 60 plus even.
That's true,
and it's not much of an issue.
Yeah,
but that's a lot harder when you're 13. You know? So I just feel like there's like one main advantage to growing up in heavily packed society is you have a lot more people who are like you around.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true.
Anyways, I feel like this entire conversation that we've had for the last 5 minutes is probably indicative that we've
I was gonna finish my last point, but I think I made it like pretty clear. Like, you could be sitting on a fucking couch and you have an anxiety attack, and that is just something from existence of being, your own existence that just fucks with you. And,
so it's worth looking at.
So it's absolutely worth looking at. Let's look at it honestly
as something to treat.
And let's put many treatments on the table.
Yeah, options are good.
Yeah, so
which actually that's probably how we got on this whole idea of that poor fucking 15-year-old guy just wants to fuck some 15-year-old
There's
girl.
options on the table in the city.
But he doesn't have any options.
Yeah, but if you move to the city, if you looked at it honestly, and he said,
"How do I get sprinkler store, man?"
Yeah, how do I get like? If you looked at his problem honestly and said, "How do I get the most play for the least pay?" Gotta go to a city.
True.
All right.
So that's probably the moral of this story for trans people. Somehow.
Yeah.
I don't expect me to make sense, dude.
It's like the moral is, we don't have anything against you.
I think actually, if I actually had to quantify a serious moral, I would say that you can be a staunch trans advocate while also saying that transgenderism, gender dysphoria, whatever, is a mental disorder.
Yeah. No, I think that's where we
the
both
overarching
are.
theme of this thing is that you can look at somebody as having something wrong with them while at the same time wanting to do everything possible to help them and accept them and get them a place in society.
Yeah,
and,
not everything's clean. Human life is messy. Why we expect it to be clean is beyond me. Not everything can be put into like, no, this is just how it is and this is the way it always will be. Anyway.
Coming to you, not so live from the hot, oppressed, not trans-friendly nor alcohol-friendly, one of those which affects us much worse than others, Lebanon. This is Chad and Jeff with the Bullshit Buddies. Thank you for listening.
See ya.